I think
that will make your life so much easier, dude.
Our buddy Robert Smith should put us on the radio.
I think he would, actually. I think he would.
I think he
Tell
would
him
Put
I'm
our
involved.
show on a spot on the radio.
He would.
I swear to God.
4
I
a.m.
swear to God. I promise you he'll put this on the radio.
He's going to absolutely hate the FCC reports. I'm leaving this in, by the way. I'm leaving this little intro
gosh,
in
you're
because I
ridiculous.
think it's
The Mountain, let's do something together. Let's do something. Let's figure out a way to get a podcast on the radio. Let's do it. I don't know how we can monetize it, but we'll give it to you for free and it'll be a good time.
Yeah. You're
Sorry
gonna
for
hate
my
us.
mic quality, though.
You're gonna have to wait. We're gonna have to be on like an 8-minute delay so you guys can censor all of the stupid things that Jesse says. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of the Shelf Hangers with good old Whoa Nelly here. That's me. I'm the producer. I don't talk much. Hopefully, in this, maybe I'll talk more today. I'm gonna talk
just loudly.
And we have the king of mini late models, the Burger King, Jesse Isidore.
The Burger King? That's a
And
new
we
one.
also have in the blue corner, his opponent in this debate show is racing Jason Fanton.
I think it's more of like a tag team, like cage match or something. Like, I don't know. You know the cringe WWE terminology, dude. What is it? Like,
It's a tag team.
Don't ask me.
It's a tag team.
I wasn't allowed to watch that stuff growing up.
It's a
what were you gonna do? Beat each
double
other
team.
up, dude?
I
I could see you and Evie. I could see you and Evie like having.
No, it was
like
bad
like a
too.
death
We weren't
match.
allowed to have stuff on the walls because we were so rough.
That's terrible.
Evie's just like pile driving Jason into the couch. It's just
Dude, no, Evie was the chair breaker. The rest of us just kept knocking the bathroom door apart, trying to get at each other.
So, Evie is a photographer, Woe LA Production, and the sister of Jason Fan. Just so everybody is aware, because I don't know if we went over. You know what? We're only 3 episodes in, and I chronologically can't figure out what we have talked about anymore. But anyways, let's get into our first topic of the show. And Jesse brought this up, and most of these topics are things that we talk about during the week, and then we're like,
unless we set somebody too far over the edge, and then it's like, don't get me further on this.
Yeah, but then we come here and then we talk for 2 hours about it. The first topic on the show today is Kyle Larson good for dirt, and more off the whole NASCAR / those kind of, I'm not saying those people, that sounds awful, but that group of motorsports folks, when they come from, not saying the upper echelons of motorsport, but dirt track racing kind of has that, that's just the grassroots podunk, whatever. Is it good exposure? Is it good for us? And in counterbalance, the conversation, is it good for NASCAR as a decision to let their guys, run and all these other things that have been topics? I guess there's a lot to talk about, and whoever wants to go first, and I'll just interject as I do.
You want to go first? You want me to, Jason?
Well, I'll go ahead and go first. I'll start. What was that term you said the other week? A rising tide lifts all ships, or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's something we can kind of apply to this situation. NASCAR has its certain set of followers, and dirt has its certain set of followers. But somebody like Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman or whoever are trying to run multiple sides of the sport. They're opening eyes for other people to bring them in. So I think absolutely they're great, and the more we can have them is better. I don't know if you guys have ever been to the track when Kyle Larson's there, but it's a mob scene around him, and he's this dude that, obviously coming from NASCAR Cup Series champion, this really big name and individual, not physically big, he's a little dude, but I've been to the track one time where he was racing at Cherokee, and he stood out, and I'm talking out in the sun. It was hot that day. He stood out in the sun for like 2.5 hours, just signing autographs, meeting people, whatnot. So I think on that side, it's great. It helps bring people to the tracks, which brings money to the tracks, because these tracks, if they know he's coming, it's this big promotion. They put out this whole marketing scheme that they can promote it, saying, hey, look, we have Kyle coming, and it really is a big draw. Sure, Alex Bowman, when he runs the sprint cars, or was until now, he's not allowed because of his flip, but he brought some. I wouldn't say it was as big of a draw as Larson, but Larson is this such incredible talent that everybody wants to see it.
I
It's
have
amazing.
something, and to piggyback off of this, it's kind of like when Tony Stewart used to come to town for the All-Stars. That's something that people still bring up around these parts, when Tony Stewart raced at State Line. And I'm sure in, the I'd hate to say the good old days, back in the day when they used to have
back in my day,
NASCAR night, and I was looking through old photos. I think Jay Peace might have had them. I'm kind of blanking, but that dude probably has photos of everything from anything. Yep. They used to have NASCAR night at places like State Line, where they would get these NASCAR drivers to come in, and again, back to that, all a rising tide raises all ships or whatever. That also helped the track, and they would put on an exhibition race, and I'm sure it happened all over the place. That's probably not a concept that just happened here back in the 70s and 80s or whenever that was taking place. Because, if you go back to the 60s, they were just running actual cup races around these parts. But to say that Tony Stewart used to kind of be that big draw, and now it's Kyle Larson. But
Absolutely.
How many of these people are NASCAR/asphalt? I would hate to say elitists, because I don't want to offend some of our friends in the Discord that we have for our iRacing league. But there are these, like, not snobby asphalt people, or
call them out a little harder than that.
I'm not saying, because
I know what you're talking about in the Discord.
It's not just him, because I know people like this all over who are like this, not just about NASCAR, but they're like it about F1. It's whatever, whatever motorsport they're all hyped up on. How much of it is crossover from Kyle Larson's running at my local dirt track, and I know him from NASCAR, and I'm going to go to the dirt track, versus Kyle Larson started in dirt, and he has a huge following on dirt. That's kind of like, I guess, the question of, when we're talking about marketing and the business and, butts in the seats, how many of those people are crossover fans coming down? I'm not saying down from NASCAR, but across from NASCAR to dirt, instead of, we're going to drive 4 hours, and to go back to bringing up Evie again, Evie and I drove 3 hours to Lernerville the one day, because not only Kyle Larson was running, but Dale Jr. was there at Lernerville.
Oh, she was, God, yes.
And, and that's huge. Dale Jr. being there also was a big draw, but so wasn't the sprint car, so wasn't Kyle Larson. So, to kind of say the question is, the too long didn't read. Does Kyle Larson help dirt track racing get the crossover fans, whether it be now from IndyCar, because a lot of IndyCar guys are dirt track guys. That's, sprint car guys, USAC guys, whatever. They kind of follow that more than I would argue NASCAR folks do, or F1 folks do.
A lot of the people with Indy used to be USAC people.
Before we get too far from, like, the original question you asked, right? So a lot of people who are just fans, okay, people who just want to watch the race, they're not going to understand where this question even comes from, okay? Because to a racing fan, there's no downside to Kyle Larson being there, right? And us as, like, drivers, people in the pits, things like that, right? This is where the other side of that argument comes in. and I have to play devil's advocate for a second, right? Because this is not my opinion. This is an opinion that I have heard widely held, okay, from other race car drivers. So, full disclosure, this isn't my personal opinion. The guys who are against guys like Kyle Larson typically have like this particular perspective, which is when guys like Kyle Larson come to town, yeah, sure, there's a lot of butts in the seats. Yeah, sure, the track makes a lot of money, but those people are only there for Kyle, and he takes away all the shine from these guys who are lifers in this sport, right? So a guy like Kyle Larson, he's going to go run a NASCAR race, jump on a plane, go run a World Outlaw sprint car race, jump on another plane, go run a NASCAR race, jump on another plane, go run a World Outlaws late model race. You see what I'm saying? And that is where this weird, funky shade comes from drivers, right? Because some drivers feel like, hey, man, I've been grinding on this race car for 10 years, right? And Kyle Larson comes to town. I finished third. Nobody even noticed it because Kyle Larson won, right? And that's the other side of the argument where a lot of guys get real testy, let's say, because race car drivers do sacrifice a ton for the sport, right? Money, time, like time with their family, you know what I mean? So that's where the shade comes for guys like Kyle Larson, Chase Briscoe, Tony Stewart. Like that's where, like, I heard it a lot more with the old timers, I guess, because it was way more common in like the 90s and 2000s for tracks to even pay some of these guys to show up, like Tony Stewart, Kenny Schrader, I believe Jeff Gordon even for a long time was taking dirt racing spots. But that's because they can make 5-10 grand a weekend for showing up, doing a meet and greet. You know what I mean? Because people were going to, like you said, make it a big deal, leverage that they were going to be there. They would sell more tickets. They would sell like VIP packages, things like that, you know? So that used to make a lot of the old timers back then salty, because I still hear stories to this day from like that generation of race car driver. Like they would say things like, he wasn't even good, he sucked, and he came here and got mollywopped by all these people, and nobody even cared because they were just happy to meet Jeff Gordon or Tony Stewart or whoever, right? That's the flip side of that argument. You can't really use that argument on Kyle, right? Because that motherfucker is winning all the time, you know, in everything.
Second race in a super late model, and he wins.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really use that argument with Kyle. Like, I feel like Kyle is one of those once in a lifetime talents who can jump in anything at any time and be really competitive.
I mean, look at how good he just did in minus speeding on pit lane at the 500 Indy 500.
Yeah,
I mean, really impressive.
You know, the crazier part about that is Kyle didn't really get much practice at all in the car. Like, all of his practice sessions got cut short and were ruined by weather. And like, that's the craziest part for me, I think, about Kyle in the Indy situation is he went in there basically green, you know,
incredible butt dyno.
Exactly. But anyways, that's the flip side of that argument. And before we got into like the crossover fans argument, like I wanted to like kind of break down why this conversation even exists, right? And like you had brought up the rising tides brings up all ships argument, right? And
right.
Obviously, see, my general opinion is that why do you care why the people are there? That like I view racing as just another extension of the show business type of thing, right? So I think a lot of race car drivers miss this, right? Because and here's, I don't know why they miss it, because so many race car drivers that I talk to, I mean, I don't pay any attention to how many people are in the stands. I mean, you could tell me after a race on, like, you'd be like, dude, you see how many people that were in the stands? And I would literally be like, I have no idea. I pay zero attention to it. I mean, I'm looking to the left and what's in front of me. That's it. I don't I don't glance up into the stands at all. Not in the heat race, not in the feature, period, end of story. But there's a lot of race car drivers who will come up to you at the driver's meeting or something and be like, do you see how many people are out there? Like, it's something they care about. So they know that this is an extension of show business. They might just not look at it that way, right? Because it's a live event. I mean, it's the same as like a football game or a basketball game. It's the same concept.
Do you remember the first time the World of Outlaws went to McKean County? Did you attend that race?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
Did you remember the crowd that was there? I mean, there were people standing all the way down the backstretch where there was no safer barrier or no walls or anything.
I believe it.
Oh my gosh, what a crowd. That was just wild.
Yeah, I do. I think I do remember that because I was a little kid. That would have been like
No. I
would have been
thinking
in the 2000s, right?
No, I'm talking. Well, I guess I'm talking like 2010-ish era.
Okay, then no, I don't remember that.
It was probably after your dad quit racing, so you probably weren't there.
I'm probably thinking of like a Stars race or something.
Yeah, see, that's before my time.
There was some pretty crazy races back then too.
That's before my time.
But I fail to see how it's anything but a net positive, right? Ultimately,
it's a huge net positive.
Ultimately, butts in the seats is all that matters for you, the driver, and the fans, right? And I don't know why you can make another argument.
There's multiple sides to the butts in the seats here. You know, as the track owner side, there's this many people that just bought tickets. I now just made the purse up, and now I might have made some profit tonight. This many people might be buying food from the concession stand, so my profit is now even further expanded that way. But as the people that might not be dirt regulars, they are now having this exposure to something they haven't been necessarily familiar with, and they go, oh, this is actually kind of entertaining. And now you might, in turn, have a return to the dirt track.
Right. Even if you only convert 1 out of every 10 people into, I mean, you can't even convert 1 out of every 10 people into a weekly participant, right?
Right.
Always with the yawning, dude. Why is it every time we turn the microphone on and we start recording, I start yawning? What is that about?
Because Daniel makes us do this past bedtime.
He does make us do this past bedtime. You have a point. We're all boomers, so we get real tired real quick. I'm fat, not a shape. But I mean, even if you only return, like, say it's 1 out of every 100 extra people that are there, right? You convert them to a weekly fan. There's still going to be some oddball people in there that say, I had a lot of fun here tonight. Let's do this more often. And they show up 1 out of every 5 weeks,
Which is still net gain.
It's a net gain. There's no losers in this equation, right?
Right.
And I think this is an interesting conversation because it talks more about like the mentality of race car drivers, which we could have a whole conversation about. I mean, there's
sorry for you guys that are listening, but you're a different breed.
Yeah. Well, and like, there's different people amongst all of us. Like there's the helpful guy. There's the guy that doesn't want anybody else to know what he's doing. There's the guy who basically thinks everybody but him is cheating. there's the guy who like
I'm cheating and they're beating me.
Exactly. And one of my favorite things is like the guy who accuses every single person who beats him of cheating is always the guy who's cheating. I mean, it's like a no-brainer,
Yeah.
So
I know he's cheating.
And it's one of those things that's funny to me because like since I started the whole setup shop thing and like setting other people's race cars up, it's funny to watch people buy and sell cars and stuff like that. And then to know who was throwing out all the accusations, and then you get to work on the race car, and then you're like, oh, they're running race fuel. Like it's like when you're supposed to be running pump gas and
Straight
little
pump,
things like
yep,
that. You
yep.
know, it's all these little tiny things that
You're getting a 4
that,
horsepower advantage.
yeah, when it's like there's literally nothing legal about this car, and I got to tell this now client, hey, I got to do all these different things to make your race car even close to legal. You know what I mean? So
That's a fun conversation.
and yeah, it's one of those things where like you have all these different personalities, and racing is such a blending pot, and we're around each other every weekend. So with some people you have like a love-hate relationship, with some people it's all love,
Yep.
with some people it's all hate. So
All
and
hate.
one thing I will say though is they are the reason why you get all these weird, like, people will come up with all these things where Tony Stewart's bad for sprint car racing, or Kyle Larson's bad for late model racing, and that usually comes from a place of jealousy or a place of dragging each other down.
Tony Stewart right now, you don't see anybody in drag racing saying anything relatively negative about Tony Stewart running the top field drag car right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because they know they're gaining fans from NASCAR, from people that are fans of Tony Stewart, that are like, hey, maybe I didn't really watch a lot of drag racing, but I want to see how Tony Stewart does.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the broader industry gets it. I think there's always going to be a handful of guys in your local level though who want to be a bigger deal than they are, because there's a lot of people who they don't have the ability to see. It's like, dude, every single one of us in this field of race cars is sacrificing our time and energy to be a part of this. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's
Come on, Boomer.
There's a lot of guys who will just always say, you should be giving me more. You should be like, everybody should pay attention to me more. Me. I mean, you will always have the squeaky
You're not
wheels.
all the crowd pleaser. Come on, people.
Yeah, you're not all Zane Harvey, dude. Calm down.
He really pleased my crowd all weekend, dude.
Yeah.
Dude, he's so good.
Dude, Zane Harvey, can we take a minute? Like, Zane Harvey is one of the nicest dudes I've ever met in real life. Like I know that there's this fake internet beef, but he is like one of the sweetest dudes I've ever met in my life. Like, he is, my dad will not shut the fuck up about how nice that kid is. He just won't. But
it's competition, brother.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I can suck Zane Harvey way better than any of you fellers. You like Zane Harvey? I like Zane Harvey better, buddy. I'll tell you what, feller.
You're gonna have
a big turn.
I think there is some stiff competition in the Zane Harvey.
There's something stiff on it. It's the right rear.
Oh boy, we're gonna get canceled before we even get on the radio.
Just remember, if it's 4 digits, put it on the right rear.
Oh my god.
It's 4 digits, it's a right rear.
Listen, there might be some stiff competition, but I'm telling you, ain't nothing stiffer than my right rear, okay? Oh my goodness.
This is stupid. We're stupid. Hey,
we're stupid. Okay, what's the next topic?
Let's transition. I was gonna try to pivot. I was gonna try to pivot. Something that you guys said, and I forgot because now you've distracted me. Tri-City Raceway Park just recently dropped their mini stock division after low car counts, and let's just say it sparked some outrage. And you're going to do that anytime that you drop a class. And I guess the conversation being, let's first start with mini stocks before we start going way deeper into this conversation, because we can talk all day about should a track drop a class? What are we doing with classes? This is a conversation probably older than, 6 to 7 class nights at most racetracks around here. I know we are some places. I'm going to tell you, you're going to see my opinion shine right here. Some places are blessed with racetracks that only run 3 or 4, or I'd say 5 is kind of like my limit before I start getting burnt out on classes in a night. So let's talk about it first. Mini stocks. And I know that the title says the death of mini stocks or whatever it's going to say. Where do you guys, so Jason, you're from down south and you probably have a different
Dude,
idea of where mini stocks are going in down there,
dude.
like
So,
as like an
if
ecosystem.
If you go, there's a track down here called Lawrence County. If you go there are literally 4 different class of 4 cylinders. I love to call that place Bang Bang Nation because you go to, and it, I mean, it is, they literally don't even like late models there, or as they call them, big cars, because they take away from the Bang Bang Nation territory. But, SCDRA, which has made its way up north, is so prominent down here. But now you took this class of cars that was supposed to be dirt cheap, beginner level, whatever you want to call it, go knock a window out of some Cavalier that you stole from some wrong neighborhood and race it. But now that you've got these guys that are building these Ecotechs or VTEC motors to the hill, changing wire and harnesses, trying to hide their not legal shocks and stuff on the car, but you went from a car that should have been like $3,000 with the roll cage in it to dang near $18,000, $20,000, where you could have actually had a real race car. Sorry, people. I'm not a mini stock fan, so I'm going to not call them a real race car. But you could have had something that's a real race car. But now, so through that, you've started to kill the classes in places because you've ended up outpricing what it was supposed to be. And again, we can talk about this with multiple other classes, but the mini stocks really, and then sometimes they're fun to watch. Most of the times you're just listening and we're going for a fucking hour straight, which, my God, oh God. Sorry.
Tell me how you really feel, dude. I was waiting for that conversation to melt down, dude. I just let him go because I could hear him winding himself.
I mean, and this is what I tell a lot of people: 4 cylinders, the opportunity for me to go grab a piss or take a piss and grab some French fries, because somebody's got to be on the track while I'm not in the grandstands. So sorry for you people that do enjoy them. I really don't. My sister's going to be mad at my statements. She fucking loves the things.
I think we gathered that.
Yeah.
Everybody's fully aware of how you feel about mini stocks at this point.
It's very
I have no shame.
To kind of piggyback, and I'm going to be the far opposite reach of Jason here, is that I think at some local tracks, and whether it be the rule set or the people, I think some racetracks, the 4-cylinder / entry level bang banger, whatever the hell you want to call them, are great. Some of those guys, and Jesse can speak on this way more about rules and regulations and for different classes. But there are certain places where, whether it be the Skirta rules or whatever, the numbers are
Did you say Skirta?
Yeah, it's Skirta. That's what it's called.
No, it says Skirta, right?
Oh, Skirta.
No, Skirta. Hey.
To the window! To the wall!
If you guys didn't know,
stop hit that wall!
I'm scared, goddamn!
This is a train wreck.
Hey, at least we're not talking shit about UMPs.
No, not yet. So anyways, let's take a class such as the Challenger class at State Line and Erie's, not to get back on praising them what they do.
I'll get back on topic and I'll talk positive about them. there is a lot of value too at some tracks to have the 4-cylinder classes. As I said, Lawrence County down here in South Carolina thrives on them. That is what keeps that track open. So obviously there in that location, we need them. We need to support them. We need to love them. Do we have to always love them? No, but we need them there because they are keeping this track open. I remember back 10, 15 years ago or whatever, State Line would run 2 features a night of 4-cylinders. So, and they weren't racing for any money. They were just racing for a trophy. So you had, 50 cars or better of them there. So you had 3 cars there. That many people come in, bought pit passes. That's paying the purse or portions of the purse for the super late models or something for that night. So although we don't necessarily love the product of the front wheel drive or even the rear wheel drive, but Bang Bang Nation of whatever sort you want to call it, they are providing a portion of the funds for the rest of the racing industry. So we need them. Does it hurt to see them go away at some places? I don't know. I've never been to that. I've never been to, what is it, Tri-City, right? I've never been there. So I don't know what the nature of that track is. I'm not fully aware of what they run. But they apparently feel that it's a class that if they lose it, it's not going to hurt them.
They were, I do believe when I was there, and sorry if I don't get the count right, it was like 7 to 9 cars that rolled up. And the week prior, you had the week prior that I was there, I think it was maybe 2 weeks, maybe 10. And that was because Erie rained out, and I think they got 2 guys from up there. So whatever. However, when you look at other tracks where, like, say, again, to go back to State Line, where maybe it's the rules that why they race so good, I would argue that if you're looking for the most solid week-to-week product at State Line, the Challengers are one of the best races, like just hands down. They get racing. They actually get going there. They rip. But when you look at some of these other tracks in our area, Tri-City being one of them that actually dropped them, you're seeing these numbers fall off, whether it be for the fact that they are moving up to a different class, not up to a different class, maybe a lateral move or more to a more rear wheel based class. It's kind of getting to the point where some of these tracks might have to ask this hard question is, and to go to Jason's point, it's always been these cars keep the lights on, they keep our pits full, they are the cheapest class of the night to fund, and XYZ, all the things saying they keep our lights on. Tri-City, that's probably not the case. The other classes were out drawing them, and their purses are more, I know, but it's not economical to run a purse for 5 cars. And that argument can be said with a couple different classes around that have been around our region for a while. And Jason, I'm sure there's classes down there that, are just dying because it's just kind of how things ebb and flow.
Right. And there's an evolution of new classes developing in places too that take place. Yeah.
And I think Jesse kind of has the feeling that, and not to speak for him, and he hasn't even got into this bad boy yet. He hasn't even gotten into the ring. He hasn't even been tagged in.
It's hard to get a word in. First off, is he still awake? Because he's been yawning a lot.
I'm still awake. You guys are just going on like 20-minute tirades, buddy.
Come on.
Jason screaming about VTEC, fucking Daniel's riffing about Tri-City.
So Jesse, since you are kind of in a and helping build a class that's growing rapidly in our area, I think you have a genuinely different outlook than probably anybody right now on this topic. So let's let him in, Jason. Tag him in, dude.
Am I allowed to speak now, boys?
Dude.
Tag me
hurry
in,
up.
Coach.
You're taking too long. I'm going to start talking again.
All right, dude. Shit, I better hurry up, dude. So I think there's 2 parts to this conversation, right? Neither one of them are fun. Okay, so there's like let's start with rules. Okay, when the mini stock started, like Jason said, they were pulling Cavaliers and Civics and whatever out of the junkyard, smashing the windows out of them, putting a roll cage in, and just sending it. Right. It was a 500 to $3,000 car to get into. I mean, you used to see people at State Line back in the 2000s literally driving their mini stock to the racetrack. Okay. Like, I'm not kidding. That's not an exaggeration. There'd be a line of those shit boxes just at the pit gate, just driving in, smoking, and all kinds of good stuff. Right. And so there's that side of it. Okay. Let me give you a comment somebody made to me last year. Okay. A guy that races a mini stock walked up to me. I'm not going to say any names or anything like that, right? He walked up to me when I was sitting by my mini late model, and he goes, "That thing is really cool, man. How much does one of these things cost?" And I said, you can get them down south a little bit cheaper if you're willing to drive, but I see them going from anywhere from say 8 to 10 grand to like 10 to 15, depending on what you're getting, where you're getting it. I mean, what the supply and demand is like in those places, but the market's a little all over for these mini lates. It's hard to give somebody a yes or no, because if you're willing to go deep down into Georgia where they've been there for a little while, yeah, you can get them 8 to 10 grand pretty regularly. They might not have the best motors or whatever. They're lapped out or whatever. But if you're trying to get into the sport as cheaply as possible, that's an option. Right. And I'm having this conversation with him, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm 15 grand deep in just the motor in my car. So as much as I like the idea of running one, I just don't know if I can afford it." And, I want you to think about that statement.
Just told you couldn't afford a mini late model.
Think about it.
But has 15 grand into a motor for, a 4-cylinder.
And me and this guy were having a serious conversation. This wasn't like one of these conversations where he was being passive aggressive, right? Mm-hmm. He was like seriously interested, seriously motivated, and I could see him doing the math in his car. What is my car worth? What could I sell it for? Is there any world where I can afford to buy one of these things outright, right? Like, you can see the math going on in his head, right? And then he finally just admitted defeat and went, I'm so deep in this car, I don't know if I can switch classes anyways. So, they're really cool. Maybe one day, and he just kind of left it at that. And that dude talked to me 4 or 5 times last year. But I said that to say this. That tells me that the rules are to a point, right? Where, 15 grand is a pretty high barrier to entry for like the lowest rung race car at the racetrack, right? Can we agree on that?
Outpricing yourself.
Yeah, you can build a pure stock for less. A good one for less than that, and go a lot faster than a mini stock, I think.
Maybe.
Right? I don't know what pure stocks versus mini stocks looks like, but if you have a $30,000 Prelude, okay, it's still limited by front wheel drive. And I know some of those cars are really boogieing comparatively to like the old junkyard classes we remember, right?
Yeah.
But still, in comparison, it's a front wheel drive like car. You see what I'm saying? It's still got the limitations of front wheel drive. It's still pushing up the racetrack. You're still just driving the snot out of it and banging it off the wall and every other thing that moves.
You meant banging the chip.
Banging the chip, banging the wall, banging the guy next to you. You're just doing a lot of banging in that class. A lot of banging. You're banging dudes, banging walls, banging chips. There's lots of stuff going on in that class.
It's aggressive.
And then the other side of it that I will say, and I've heard this from not one, but about 4 different track promoters. The mini stock class comes with a lot of drama. A lot of it.
So, I got one for you then on that.
At what point, as a track promoter, do you start looking at the math and looking at the numbers and going, there's 8 or 10 of these cars and we're glad to have them and we don't want to drop the class. However, there's a fist fight every 3 weeks in the pits and we don't know how to police this anymore. At what point do you make the decision to axe that $500 to $800 a week you're receiving from them? right? So if the class is already dwindled to a point where you're not making a ton of money off of it, say your car count is under 10 cars, when do you make the decision as a track owner? Okay, they're fist fighting every week in the pits. They're always screaming at each other. They're always mad about the pill draw. They're crying favoritism. What point as a track promoter do you go, okay, enough is enough. If you think we're this terrible, go somewhere else, right? And I see a lot of this with race car drivers where they protest, cry, whine, yell, scream. They're mad about this. They're mad about that. They're mad about this. They're mad about that. And then finally the track goes, okay, dude, go somewhere else then. And then they're like, I can't believe you got rid of us. And it's like, man,
So
shit, man. What
I
did you
can
think they were going to do? You know?
I can think of an actual case where behavior of said class actually caused a track to close last year.
Oh boy.
So in multiple reasons, but it was mostly for the mini stock class at this facility. One of the reasons was they were refusing to fill out the tax paperwork. So some people may not know, but drivers or team owners or whatever have to fill out tax paperwork for their earnings because it's technically an earnings at the racetrack, right? So the mini stock drivers were refusing to do that. Okay, that put the track in a bind on that. One of the other issues they had was with insurance, and the insurance company kept saying, hey, you need to keep people out of this location, and this location. If not, we're going to pull our insurance. Well, the track officials at this facility kept telling these people over and over and over again, I can't have you here. You can't be standing there. Get off that wall. You can't be in between that spot. And they refused. So what else could the track do? They couldn't. Insurance basically pulled it on them, and because they quit participating, so the track closed. And then I was at a drivers meeting in another race where the owner of that track, and bless her for actually laying into, I mean, the mass of everybody there, including the touring series that was there that night. And she laid it out for us. She's like, look, this is what happened there. If you guys in this class, I am singling you out, will not listen, we're going to be like that track there. So there's some disconnect where they truly think that the 4-cylinder classes think they're these outlaws. Why, I'm not sure, but their outlaw mentality has ended up hurting others.
Well, and that's fine if you want to be the outlaw, but don't be surprised when you get outlawed.
Yeah,
that's the. I mean, and there, it's really a war that's being fought on multiple fronts. Like, you always had a lot of the rough and tumble stuff with the 4-banger crowd, and you know, some of that is good for business.
It is.
Like, don't get it twisted. Some of that is good for business, but like, you got to understand at some level, right? Like, so our mini late models, for example, we're at a very sensitive point in our class. Like, we have to be diligent about maintaining the rules, about maintaining solid racing events. Like we have to really kind of lay the law down if we're having a lot of cautions, and like, we got to work with tracks and be like, look, don't hesitate to boot us if you've got a guy wrecking 4, 5, 6 times during a race. Park them, you know, because we're at a very sensitive point right now in our class's growth. The car count is growing rapidly, and that's good. That's all positive. But there's a ton of new guys, and as much as you love that and you love to see it, it's always a mixed bag. Like, new guys are learning, you know what I mean? And you don't blame them for making mistakes, but you know, sometimes when new guys start learning, it can be a snowball of accidents, you know, because there's a lot of nerves in a race car. Things can go downhill quick, and it's up to the class and the track to make agreements. If X happens, Y needs to happen. Right. So if this happens, if there's 2 or 3 incidents, you got to boot that guy, park him for the night, let him come back next week. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but at some point, the class needs to put its best foot forward in these weird intermediate times, right? The car counts look great on paper. They come with a set of challenges that you need to, as a group, be adults and go, okay, look, we're really happy all you were here. Here's the situation, right? If this happens, we have to respond this way, right? And that's an uncomfortable conversation because you have to have uncomfortable conversations because it sounds like shit for the guys who are veterans in a class to be like, hey, new guy, stop wrecking everybody, right? But at the same time, you don't have to single people out. You don't have to do any of that. You can just say, here's the rules. We're going to abide by them, and that's how it's going to go. And you might be targeting a specific demographic of your class. Now, whether it be the mini late models, the mini stocks, whatever, you might be targeting a specific demographic of your class that doesn't mind the rules. But you have to make that rule change because if you don't, the entire class will suffer. It just will. And I mean, obviously the mini late model comparison is a totally different one to the mini stock comparison because the mini stocks have been around forever, right?
Yeah.
And they probably have a pretty well established rule set. But that rule set has also gotten them in trouble. Like I'm seeing the car counts dwindle everywhere. It's not just at Tri-City or whatever. It's everywhere in this region. People have started to go, why the hell are we building $30,000 preludes when we could just go build a pro mod or go build a mini late model or go build if the barrier to entry is so stupid high. I mean, and I'm being dramatic with the $30,000 mark, right? But I have had people, no bullshit, in that mini stock class come up to me and go, I have 15 grand in just my motor and I replace a wheel bearing every week. And you're like, holy shit. Like
$2,000 wiring harness for a mini stock.
Yeah. And it's like
seriously, I know of that situation.
Yeah, and it's like
finding
so you have
low
a hub
ohm
assembly.
wiring harnesses.
Yeah, so you're racing for $400. You're replacing a $300 hub assembly on that Honda every week. And not to mention tires, and you also have a $15,000 motor. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? Like you're not only are you pricing all the noobs out of the class, but to keep up, they have this absurd rate of week to week expenses, right? And the amount of people that have told me that they replace wheel bearings every week or every other week or whatever is crazy. I mean, that's crazy in that class. Like,
Duralast.
And those are whole hub assemblies. That's an expensive. That is
Oh,
an
yeah,
expensive
yeah.
thing. You know.
It's not packing a bearing in like a wide 5 hub.
No. So, I mean, they're fighting a war on multiple fronts at the moment, which is the outlaw mentality, like you said, the rule set, the price, everything in that is kind of going against that class at the moment. And I wouldn't go as far as to say they're dying. I would say that you're going to see a lot more tracks making decisions like this. But I think the response to it will be like, so let's give Bradford some credit. Dennis had proposed I don't know if it was a front wheel drive 6-cylinder or a bone stock 4-cylinder class.
I'd love a front wheel drive 6-cylinder class.
The bone stock class.
Yeah. And he had that. I think that's a good idea. Like take that class back to where it's supposed to be.
Yes.
And you've got to almost open the ECM tuning. Right. You got to be like, you can tune your ECM, but you can't do anything else. Because if you don't open the ECM tuning, everybody's going to do it anyways. Right. So let's not make a rule. Let's not make a rule we can't enforce. Right. But everything else must be bone stock. Right.
I remember, and you saying the bone stock, I remember back when my old man was tech official at Freedom, there was a kid that was racing. God, I don't remember what the car exactly was, but I remember what he got disqualified for. He won one week with the car being legal, took second the following week or whatever. It might have been vice versa, but he come into the tech shed, the other tech guy and my old man popped the hood, and all of a sudden there's an engine cold air intake on the car. Like, you clearly, and the rules here, and now at this point it's probably legal, but at that point it wasn't legal. why would you put something so obvious on the car that's not legal? And I still feel like there's still a lot of that in that class.
Yeah, and I mean, like I feel like we have an epidemic in the sport at the moment of classes with rules that can't be enforced. Or now, whether that's a shortage of guys who know how to enforce them, or guys that just know that there's certain aspects of each individual class that are just impossible to police. Because that's why the SCDRA rule set, we were just making fun of Daniel for calling it SCRTA or whatever, right? But in that 4-cylinder class, that's why that rule set got made, right? Because the cheating was almost impossible to curb. So they just said, look, it's just got to look stock. You can do whatever else you want.
They don't look
right?
stock.
Isn't that essentially the rule set there? Now, I might be talking totally out of turn.
They don't. I mean, they don't even have trunk lids on the cars. They're running like aftermarket performance body nose pieces on them.
Yeah, they dress
some cars down here that just have straight pieces of aluminum down the side.
There are some places, and I don't know if it's straight up SCDRA SCRTA rules, that they, and I always make fun of them for cosplaying as late models or street stocks. Listen, I am a big, huge, everybody shits on mini stocks. I always say challengers at state lines got to figure it out where they got stock bodies, they got to have trunk lids, whatever. But when you start putting a Camaro nose piece on your fucking Cobalt, we have issues, okay? When your car looks almost indistinguishable of a stock car, and we could get into like the weeds and saying, oh, well, street stocks all look like late models. Shut up. That's what we're not talking about right now.
Well, street stocks do look like late models. Take the fucking spoilers off them.
Yeah, shut up, Jason. You're only making my point more valid here. Like, I don't know. I like kind of like the rules they got, I know that it's really like a single region between Erie and State Line. But yeah, when you talk about like body kits getting put on these things, and it's getting to the point where, it's they kind of look ridiculous. And not only, they're not their own worst enemies, and they're battling, like you guys say, multiple fronts. But I kind of want to open up the conversation in another direction, though, is that so there's a lot of classes, I would argue, in our area. And I'm sure down there, Jason, the age-old 14 classes a night down south probably rings true too.
602 late models, 604 late models, steel block late models, and then 17 different stock car classes.
Yeah. So we're kind of seeing this right now where certain classes are kind of going the way of the dodo bird, and I hate to see it. There's a lot of classes I grew up watching, and they're kind of going through some turbulent time with either car counts, tracks that'll even touch them, or XYZ. And I guess kind of the question being, when it comes to whether it's mini stocks or any other class, at what point in time do you, let's put our track promoter hats on here, everybody, fucking strap them on, where you start saying, all right, enough is enough, boys. We're going to have to, hey, these are the classes we're running. We're not running 7 classes to make everybody happy so everybody can run, each individual type of rule set that they've ever wanted and their little hearts can desire. At what point do you guys believe that this is kind of like the idea of, hey, we're dropping you because XYZ? Like, what happens, like, when, I guess, the death of a class, at a track? Like, where would you guys start drawing the line as a promoter? I guess that's the question.
So let's take 2 case studies, right? So let's take mini stocks at Tri-City. Let's take crate lates at Bradford, which has been controversial, right? So they're from a business perspective, I kind of see both arguments. And like, so Jeremy Wonderling, Ward Shell, I'm going to leave a bunch of people out because
Messler runs there weekly
Messler,
usually.
right. So I want to say there was 4,
5. I would say 5 weekly last year.
Yeah, let's say 5 weekly late models, crate lates at Bradford, right? And I think he paid out, what was it, 1,000 to win?
And something about Bradford that a lot of people don't know is that they pay extremely well for, for our region standards, I guess. I would say. Like, I've always been told by drivers, and I don't know shit about fuck, because I've never raced a race car, nor have I ever thought about, the expenses. But people used to come there because the pay was so good, and I'm sure they still do. But anyways, carry on.
Well, so I see both sides of this, like, in vivid color, and I empathize with both the track and the drivers, right? This really sucks for the guys who showed up every week to make that car count what it was. Okay. But Dennis does typically pay really well in comparison to all the other tracks, right? And it's such a double-edged sword. So like we all saw like the Damian Bidwell and Dennis back and forth on Facebook, and I love both of those dudes. Okay. Like I sympathize with Damian Bidwell. If you're on the Rush series and you needed that race, that really sucks that they dropped it last minute, right? Maybe it could have been handled better. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that because I don't race that class. It's not really my spot, right? On the flip side, though, I watched them pay, what was it, 1,000, 1,200 to win or whatever it was to win all week last year or all season last year with 4 to 5 cars all year. And that could not have been a profitable enterprise for him. I don't know how long he's been doing that. I'm going to assume it was multiple years. And then on the very rare occasion there was a new car that would show up, or a couple of new cars, there was always some crazy drama. Like somebody was mad or ran over somebody, or, it was, because Bradford is one of those tracks that, especially in a late model, man, you better be ready to be banging doors and sending sliders. And it is a little bullring racetrack. There's not a lot of room for big cars like that,
100%.
And I think that I think Dennis running Bradford is in a very, very hard spot there because there's still this aura that if you don't have late models, you don't have a racetrack. I don't know why, because it seems like everywhere the late model car count is kind of struggling, with the exceptions of the big tracks like your State Lines, your Eries, those tracks, right? So with that being said, at what point, it's going to be on an individual basis. Do I blame Dennis for taking at least a break on the late models? I guess I don't. I don't. Do I sympathize with the Rush guys who really needed those points and money? Not at all. Or but definitely, I'm saying that wrong. I do sympathize with them because, like, it really sucks for those 5 guys who showed up every week, man. It really sucks. They put in the time there. They really wanted it to work. Jeremy travels all the way from Wellsville every week to be there. Ward travels from Warren. Those are not small drives. So I do sympathize very much with both sides of that equation because I know it couldn't have been profitable, but I also know that, it also sucks for the guys who are relying on that income and the points and all that stuff. It's not fun for those guys. So you're between a rock and a hard place. And then you flip. So there's the money side of it, right? Where the money isn't worth maintaining the class. And then you have the mini stocks at Tri-City where it sounds like they probably weren't getting paid great to begin with. It sounds like there was some interpersonal drama that got in the way. Right. And that's kind of a different case where it's like, you kind of got to know your lane, right? If you're in a class that the car count's not up and that you're in a situation where you're probably on the fence to boot, right? Where they're probably doing the math in their head going, this takes up an hour of our night and there's 4 of them. How long do we maintain this till the car count starts coming up, and with them, it's probably less of a financial decision and more of a, like, is the juice worth the squeeze on this particular car? You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And those are totally different situations, and every track is going to handle it based on the individual situation. You see what I'm saying? So it's really hard to give you a yes or a no or a straight line answer on how our track's going to handle this moving forward. I think that it's going to be on a case by case basis everywhere, right? And here's the thing: if you're in a class that's on the fritz, don't panic. Go out and help all the people that are in the class so that they can be as competitive as humanly possible, put on as good of a show as possible, and try to bring people into the class to ease the pressure, right? And then after you get people into the class, then you can, start negotiating like higher pay every week and things like that. But the entire time, you need to be very acutely aware of what you look like to the track promotion, whether you like them or not, whether you think that they're Nazis or not, or whether you like the way the track is run. None of that matters. Do you want to run there? If the answer is yes, then don't go punch that guy after the race, okay? Don't go screaming through the stands and throwing wrenches at people.
Don't go belittle them on Facebook.
Yeah, don't talk smack on the internet. And here's the thing, you can have disagreements for sure, but go talk to the guy. Don't go scream at him and call him a scumbag and throw a hissy fit like a 9-year-old child. Go talk to him and be like, hey, this is what you did. This is why I disagree with it. Let's talk about this. I promise you'll have better results. I promise. You know what I'm saying? You might not get the answer you want to hear, but and I don't want to single that class out because you see hood rat shit in every class, right? I mean, I've seen some of the mini late model guys get fired up at a time or two. I've probably been guilty myself, right? But on the flip side, we typically handle that shit behind closed doors. We argue about it. We shake hands and we walk away, right? Like, if you were to watch me and Terry race together, you might think we might hate each other. But the truth be told, I love Terry and I love racing with Terry. He's one of my favorite people to race with. And the quality of our racing, me and him were just throwing hands at Genesee. We were throwing hands at Bradford. I mean, to the outsider, it might look like even the flagman was like, holy crap, man, what happened between you two? And it's like, oh, that's just how we race. You know what I mean?
Just getting after it.
Yeah, just getting after it. But we're at that weird level of comfortability where, even if it goes too far, we're going to have the conversation. We're just going to move on, like, hey man, don't do that. or thank you, but not so hard next time. You know what I mean? It's going to be a conversation where, I mean, I'm just using that as an example because that's probably the closest example in my mind, but be a grown up with these issues, because I promise you, if you're in a class that's struggling and the track thinks to themselves, these guys are fist fighting in the pits every week. I mean, half their crew is pounding natty lights all night. It's one of those situations where if you put the track in between a rock and a hard place, don't be shocked when they decide to just jump ship. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You've got to be aware of what position you're putting the track in. I mean, that's my 2 cents on it.
Well, I mean, yeah. I as I said before, with the other track down here, they've put him in one situation to create a negative effect, and then there's other ways that people's actions through these classes have, I mean, incredible effects with decisions on how the track is run, what classes are going to be there, whether that class is going to be there or not. And people have to be cognitive of their own decisions on how they approach a topic, how they do it, and then the way it's going to be received by those that are actually investing in the facility or sponsoring the races that provide those funds.
To also interject here, because we talked a lot about social media, do you think, and I'm sure it's been said hundreds of times by anybody in the industry, do you think social media, when it comes to grassroots racing, especially when grassroots racing is just this big, huge passion project, right? No one out here is doing this to get rich. This isn't NASCAR. No one's pouring millions of dollars into a facility. Do you think social media at one end is the best tool for promotion to get people into the sport to say, hey, get your eyeballs over here. This is why we deserve your ass in our seats on a Friday night versus you going to a concert or, staying at home or whatever people like to do on a Friday night. With it also being one of the biggest, and I have no better words to describe it other than just being a kind of a swamp with shitty people at all times when everybody's a racetrack car owner, racetrack or arm track driver.
Armchair
Arm.
driver.
Sorry, I've been running on empty for a couple straight days here. An armchair driver, racetrack promoter, team owner, track prep crew. We saw it with State Line with our stupid comments, and if we really were gonna go and do that again with the whole Tri-City comment section, and I think Erie's also rained out and some other stuff. I'm sure that there's a whole bunch of hoopla about, but let's go on this to do you think social media is helping or hurting the sport more? Like what side of the spectrum are we on right now? Because it seems like it shifts every now and again. It seems like, say, when Hunt the Front started to blow up, we had an influx of people getting interested in dirt track racing again. When, say, Flow Racing and all their stuff, when they started to blow up, there are more eyeballs on the sport, probably more than it ever has been. However, you also have what Jesse would call the boomers and the window lickers on Facebook, because everybody has an asshole and an opinion, dude. Just like,
I love how every time you say something offensive, you're like Jesse would say.
just that is, but that's what.
He did just quote you. He did literally just quote you.
No, I know.
But that's just something. That's
I'm not
how
disagreeing
Jesse
with my willingness to say it. I'm just saying.
That's what he would. That's what he would call these group of people. So, however you guys want to split this, I mean, we both, all three of us have grown up. Well, not grown up, but kind of have been there since the beginning of the social media phase of grassroots racing really becoming prominent on social media.
Weren't you still in diapers when social media started, Daniel?
Hey, easy, but I was there when all the cool kids got there, dude.
Did
so
you even have a MySpace?
who?
Exactly.
Dude, let me tell you, Farmville was my shit, though. But anyways, get on after it, guys. What do you think?
You want to go or you want me to go?
Well, I mean, I can go ahead and start, and I guess, but there's a lot of social media does a lot to drive the sport, but it also pulls it back. So, I mean, what direction do I really want to go on that? I mean, we can look at you, Daniel, who uses your pictures and is a large side of the promotion of the sport, where you're doing to try to engage people. You're trying to bring it forward. Yeah, you bring some satire. You talk some crap about some people, mostly Zane again, but
and Jesse.
And Jesse. But you on that side of social media, there's this great promotion of it. But as we kind of, last episode we were in on the comments, there's a lot of incredibly negative things said, and that's one track, one night. That doesn't cover the vast majority of some of the things that are said, because there are people that lay into tracks weekly over little things. Yeah, rain out is kind of major, but I mean, there are people that literally lay into tracks over, on lap 12 of the mini stock race, this person jumped early on the start and had like their nose just past the fourth lug nut on my left rear, and I don't think that was right. So you have people going to these extremes on social media, blasting tracks, blasting decisions. Yeah, I mean, I understand sometimes some of the things that are grieved there, but oftentimes it goes too far. And then we've got this black eye in the sport where others that might not be involved in the sport are then seeing all this negativity. So some people don't have the exposure on the social media to the positives that the sport has, because they see this relative that they have that's involved with racing is constantly posting all these negatives, and it's just negative, negative, negative. That hurts the sport. That keeps people from gaining interest. So I guess on that side, we've got to be able to find a way to create a balance on that. Or, I mean, I like some people or some track promoters where they make it so people can't comment on posts. They just make their post and that's what it is. But I know on the positive sides, there's just, with so much that social media does. Like if there's if there's an issue with rain, yeah, you're still going to get those negative comments, but we can use this social media as an outlet to go, hey, we're canceled, we're postponed. I can tell you all the time, if I'm heading to a track, I'm checking Facebook, I'm checking Twitter. Have they updated anything? Are we racing? Are we not racing? What's the plan? Hey, we can loop back Kyle Larson back into this conversation. The track might use their social media to promote Kyle Larson or whatever series they have coming in, that somebody else that kind of likes racing might not be fully involved. They see it on social media, like, hey, you know what? I think that's a good opportunity. I'm going to go, sure, I'm sitting on the toilet, legs numb. This decision is a great idea right now, but there's value there. I don't know, Jesse. What do you think on that one? But
so the truth about social media is that it always does both, right? It always helps and hurts,
right.
And I think if you're a track, and I think the reality is you need harsh do's and don'ts as a track promoter, right? And let's come up with a couple real quick, right? Don't directly engage with people. Just don't. Not positively, not negatively, period. Right?
And
if you do have to address criticism, you do it indirectly. Right? You make general comments to address blanket criticisms.
Yep.
But don't ever make passive aggressive comments. But here's the other thing you can do, right? Instead of getting into a back and forth bickering contest with people who are never going to be pleased, right? Here's another strategy, right? Set up like a shared drive folder. Look around at any racetrack, right? There's GoPros on half the race cars. So this is a wasted opportunity from every racetrack, right? Create a shared drive folder with different folders in that drive folder, right? One for the street stocks, one for the mini lates, one for the rush lates, one for the super lates. Everybody has their own drive folder. And everybody can upload all their in-car footage, and nobody else can take it, but everybody at the track can see it, right? There's a track that's a really good example of this that we race at once in a while. It's called Blanket Hill. They have basically an open door policy. Like if you have in-car footage from the racetrack, send it to us. We'll turn it into reels, right? And a racetrack you can take what is a wave of negative comments from a rainout day or whatever, and you can just absolutely bury it with action shots, photos, videos, and you can make it so that people that are potential customers don't even see that shit.
They don't even change the algorithm.
Exactly. And here's the thing about trolls. Don't feed them and they go away. Right? And this is the problem is it feels bad to have people shit on you, right? But one of the things that our generation is really good at is we grew up with the internet. We're completely unfazed by it. We're totally aware that every neck-bearded weirdo has a weird opinion about all kinds of crazy things. I mean, the amount of shit you see the boomers saying on comments threads all over the internet is wild, dude. like
especially that Jesse wild. Isidore dude. He pops off.
Dude. Yeah, dude, he pops off, dude. But my point is though, is if you're going to be a public figure, which a racetrack is, right?
Yeah.
Your page is a dumping ground for people who love and hate you. Okay. And you need to acknowledge that both of those things will exist simultaneously, whether you want them to or not. So don't feed the trolls. Don't address negativity unless you feel like you absolutely have to, right? Like if you want to make a comment addressing people being mad about a rain out, I'm not necessarily against it, but just know that there's no good outcome there, right?
There's going to be a reciprocation no way to of win. Words.
Exactly. There's no way to win this conversation, right? The people that hate you will always hate you. The people who support you will always support you. At the end of the day, I think both of those people come back every week. So don't address them because there's no good outcome from doing it, right? Don't address it and just go, hey, we rained out this week, but here's some in-car footage of Dave Hess's race last week, right? Or pick anybody who passed a ton of people the week before, upload their in-car footage as a reel, upload it as a story, be like, hey, you can't be here this week, but here's something that happened last week that was pretty cool, right? And that's a way to take an unwinnable situation like a rain date that, you know, the track just couldn't, like, I keep defaulting back to the state line situation because that was our first internet comment section, right? This isn't like directed at state line in any way, shape, or form, right? I'm just using that as an example because that's our most current example. But there's yeses and nos about social media, and I think that, like I said in the beginning, it's both things. It's both overwhelmingly positive and overwhelmingly negative. It's all about how you choose to embrace it. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Why are you guys messaging the group chat over and over again? Oh my God, Jason's mic just fucking...
No, it switched over. He's on a different microphone, but that's okay. We have another long form podcast in the can. God, it's we do too much. We film this or record this or whatever the hell this is after the cluster truck, so it's already a mentally taxing night. And guys, both of you are a bunch of boomers because you have notifications on your phone. Anyways, guys,
I actually just muted my phone, and I don't know why it's still doing this.
I blame Jason.
I blame Jason too. I don't know why he would leave and then spam us with notifications.
He didn't leave. We can hear him. We can hear his notifications popping in the background, or what I thought was him. Anyways, he's probably gone. Really thank all our sponsors: Carpies, Closest, Race Supply, Martin Dynamics, Great Lakes Speed Shop. They sponsor the Woe Show, which we had Emily Schwenke on, who is the late model photographer. This is going to come up after that. So if you haven't got there and you like hearing all this insider baseball about, you know, it's more about photo and media and stuff like that, make sure you go see that. Great Lakes Speed Shop, the Woe Show. Great little thing there. And also the Mountain radio station, 106.3. Make sure you listen to them. They are promoting the ever-living hell out of our race. We appreciate them very much and all they do for us. And also, next week, I don't know if we'll have a podcast up by then, but it's the 5th anniversary of Whoa Nelly Productions race. And you want to know what's a cool little thing? Because we started this podcast and all that, it's kind of a celebration of this, my other podcast, all the photos and all the people that made this happen. So if you guys have some time, McKean County is going to be the place to be. We have a shit ton of modifieds rolling in to the pits, and it's going to make Jesse and Jason, their hearts are going to be full because they love modified so much.
So much. They're my favorite.
So, we might be able to get out of this episode without Jesse having some conspiracy theories about me.
I think I'm too tired for conspiracy theories.
So
I'm so tired that I'm self-conscious about this episode. That's how tired I am.
It was a good episode. So we'll all see you guys on the flippity flip. We'll see you guys later.
Later, fam.
And I'll just for Jason, bye.
Bye.